It's really a pleasure to be here, and I want to make a bet, which is how many unicorns are going to come out of the people that are in this room, 10 years from today. Let's see what the number is. Hopefully we can reconvene and see what it is. Cool, so it's a pleasure to be here today, particularly to see a lot of talent in the room, which is something very, very exciting for me. And what I want to do today is tell you a little bit of the story of Waabi, what we do, and then share with you some maybe lessons or some things that I think are important as an entrepreneur to take into account in order to be potentially successful. All right, so let's start. Cool, so a little bit about Waabi. So I founded the company 2 years ago. Actually, yesterday was our 2 years anniversary during International Women's Day. So it's a very, very, I would say, special day for us in many ways. And we are based in Toronto as well as San Francisco. Our headquarters are in Toronto. We are a proud Canadian company. And as mentioned before, so we raised one of the largest, if not the largest, Series A in Canadian history with over $100 million. Now, more important than the actual amount of money was the fact that we have tremendous investors behind us that are not only going to put big checks, but more importantly, they're really going to help us grow as a company and be successful in the future. In terms of what we do, so we work on trucks, self-driving trucks, Class 8, the biggest trucks that you see out there, as well as we do this with level 4 autonomy, which means that in the future, there will not be driver in the trucks at all. What is very important when you build a company is that you need to have something that is different from everybody else. For us, the biggest differentiator is not in our business model. Our biggest differentiator is really in the technology to solve self-driving. And I'm going to go in details, while staying relatively high level in a couple of slides, into the groundbreaking AI technology that enabled us to build self-driving in a way that we can really deploy it at the scale everywhere, as well as we can do it safely, sustainably. Very, very important. All right, and we can do this all at a fraction of the cost of everybody else. Our competitors spend billions of dollars per year. Let me repeat that. Billions of dollars per year is a true number, okay? So for us, we can do this with a very, very small fraction and super, super fast, thanks to this transformational technology. So that's where innovation is at the root of Waabi, which is very different from most of the companies that I've seen out there. And it was really, really important to crack the research/production mix so that these two things can actually go together, align in the same path. Very, very important if you really want to build this transformational technology, okay? Cool, so I think it's worth to spend 2 seconds to say, why do we care about self-driving? Well, it's really going to transform the world as we know it today. What does that mean? Is that our cities are going to be greener. We are going to have less traffic congestion. We are going to save so many lives. More than 2 million people die every year on the road. We do trucking, which means that we haul cargo, from point A to point B in this very, very long-haul routes. This is at the backbone of the economy, so that you can actually really help basically almost everybody out there. So it's very, very important to get this right. What people get also very excited about is the fact that it turns out it's a $1 trillion market, okay? So that's a big number, right? And it's very, very few players that actually go after this. So if you're one of the winners or the winner, it's a big pie, so people are happy. But that's not the important thing for me. The important thing for me is really to bring this transformational technology to empower people, to build a better world, okay? So that's sort of like what we're trying to do. Now, why trucking? So there's 2 main reasons for not doing robotaxis. The first reason is from a business perspective, which is it's not clear that robotaxis will be used by everybody. There is many things that you can do. Potentially that there could be better solutions. In the case of trucking, there is no drivers. There is a shortage of drivers that is 80,000 in the US today, 26,000 in Canada, given the fact that it's a much smaller country. Young people don't want to be truck drivers. It's a pretty tough life. Sometimes they don't even have access to showers, right? So it's below the standards of life that we think, right? So automation is kind of the only way to solve this. That's why we are bringing this technology first there. We don't want to displace jobs. We want to enhance by providing alternative solutions so that we can solve our supply chain issues. Very, very important. Okay. Second reason why we do trucking is that is mostly driving in highways, which is more structured than our cities, so it's easier to solve self-driving in those domains than driving in Toronto. As you know, as a human, it's extremely hard. You need to be concentrated all the time, and even though you still see all sorts of crazy things, right? All right, so where we are today in terms of self-driving, right? So if you go outside, you don't see a single self-driving vehicle, right? Despite what Tesla says, it's not a self-driving vehicle. So why is this the case? Is that since the DARPA challenge, there's been meaningful progress. We have advanced, right? But it's very far from this, from really solving the problem so that you can really tackle all the different situations that arise on the road. And the consequence is that, well, the product is not there, right? Self-driving hasn't been solved. So in order to really solve this, we need new technology. Because the way that the old technology or the previous technology is going has really stalled, right? Every day is harder to make progress, and we still have a long way to go. So in my opinion, the only way that we will get there is by making meaningful changes, next generation technology. And that's what AI and generative AI in particular is providing, and Waabi is the only provider of this technology to self-driving. So very, very exciting things. All right, so I mentioned before that the industry has hit a road, it has hit an impasse, and it's because the type of approach that I utilize is built by humans for humans. I typically say that. What do I mean is that it's very manually specified, and basically you have this complex problem of self-driving that you divide into small subproblems to solve, with the hope that if you solve them all, they're going to bubble up to a solution. That's extremely hard. You all know probability, hopefully, right? So the probability of getting that right is 1 minus the probability of getting that wrong. The more things that you have, the more that things can go wrong, right? So that's not necessarily a good solution. On top of this, you need thousands of people to develop this technology because it's very complicated, the solution, right? So, and it's very manual. So that's why you need this $1 billion, burn rate every year. And also, you need to, the way that they do testing is that you need to go on the road and test by driving around. That's not sustainable. That's not the safest solution. That's also very, very expensive. The better the system gets, the more that you need to drive, the more it takes you to actually see the next thing to solve, right? That's why it's not a scalable solution. All right, so what is Waabi doing that is different? I mentioned before AI, generative AI, a lot of buzzwords that sound very maybe exciting, hopefully, for you. But basically, our solution is what we call Waabi Driver, which is composed of a software and a hardware component. This is a picture of our truck driving around. Okay, this is a real truck. This is not CGI. Okay, and in terms of the hardware, what we do is that we integrate sensors and compute into an OEM platform that provides the truck itself. And what is really the secret sauce of Waabi is the software that drives these trucks and the way that we do development so that we can actually solve this problem. Important for us is that we build a solution that you can integrate at the factory level because you want to build something that is robust, that your customers are going to adopt. You can do aftermarket installation, get a regular truck, tweak it, now it drives kind of autonomously, and here we go, Walmart, Loblaws, go and deal with it, right? That's not a way that you actually build a product. Instead, we believe that you partner with the OEM, which is the truck company, and then you build a solution integrated from day one. In terms of our sensors, you almost don't see that it's a self-driving truck. You see on the top, there is 3 sensor pods that are super lightweighted, plug and play, very easy to maintain, as well as this very unique design in the grill of the truck. This is another sensor pod. So these sensors can see around the truck, 360 degrees. They are redundant, and we use LiDAR, cameras, radar, because you want to maximize safety, not minimize cost. Okay, that's very, very important as well. And in terms of the software, just to give you a hint in one slide of what it is. So it's a single AI system that can drive. What does it mean? Is that it's end-to-end trainable, but it's interpretable. You can trace its decisions. So it's a very different type of technology that anybody else is developing. And it really generalizes well across all the situations, all the geographies, all the things that you need to handle when you drive on the road. And the second kind of key differentiator is, I mentioned that companies need to test by driving these vehicles. For us, we have this magic simulator that I'm going to show you in a second, that basically we can clone the world and generate all the situations and all the things that happen on the world and then test and train the system there, so that when we deploy it, it's already super performant. And that's a totally different ballgame than anybody else is doing in the industry. And that's the way that you get a sustainable, safe solution that is much cheaper, because now it's the cloud, it's not trucks just driving miles and miles and miles. All right, so let's look at that simulator, and I have a couple of videos for you in this place. Cool. All right, so why so special? Waabi World is the name of our simulator. It's because, as I mentioned before, what we do is you can drive around any platform, let's say a passenger car with a lidar and a camera, and we can reconstruct automatically, thanks to our AI algorithms, everything that you see. And by everything, I mean every single moving agent or actor that is there, the static environment, etc. So you create a digital twin of everything that you see. And that becomes automatically part of the simulator. So you can clone the entire world this way. And then you can generate through generative AI all sorts of situations and things using those agents that you have never observed before. And you can control it so that rare things are not rare anymore, because you decide when to create them. That's the way that you actually can win against just driving on the real world, right? Because you can generate whatever you want. Important to this is that we are testing the entire software stack, not just a piece. And in order to do this, we need to simulate how the sensors, the cameras, the lidars, the radars, will have observed the scene as you are driving. And that's really, really hard. Typical technology tried to do this manually with artists and things like this, and very simple graphics engines. For us, we do this through new transformational generative AI technology. And it enables us to do this in real time, as well as with a level of fidelity that nobody has. So for the autonomy system, for the brain of the self-driving vehicle, it's the same, the simulator, as the real world. Once you have this, there is no more need for the real world apart from the final validation and verification. That's the way that you get this really transformational and change in the industry. All right, so this is all great, right? Sounds like very cool, Raquel, but can you show us some examples? Can you convince us that this is really the case? So this is the Turing test. Let's see if you guys agree, okay? On the left-hand side, hopefully, or right-hand side here for me, is a sequence that is a real sequence captured in San Francisco. I'm going to play a whole bunch of things with this sequence for you to show some of the capabilities of the simulator. Okay, so on the left is the simulator, right? On the left is the real world, and we are just driving around a passenger car. And then what we're going to do is, just with this little snippet of video and lidar camera and lidar data, we're going to reconstruct everything. And then I'm going to create new realities, okay, to show you what the simulator can do. So this thing on the right, this video where it's an empty San Francisco street, something that never happens even at night, right? It's actually, every pixel is simulated. Okay, so we reconstruct the world, and then we can resimulate it. In this case, what I did is that I automatically removed everything that was dynamically moving, just to show you how well we can reconstruct everything that is static in the world. Okay, cool. All right, and oftentimes people ask me, but can you do this at night? What about if there's glare, as the sun shining in front of you, all that stuff? So this is my answer, is that this works everywhere, right? So these are it turns out that every pixel here is simulation. Nothing is the real world. Did you pass your Turing test? Did you thought that this was real footage? Right, pretty good, huh? Yeah. All right, so not only is for you looks like the real world, for the brain, for the autonomy system, the thing that the software that drives the truck, it thinks is the real world. And that's the key for success, because it shouldn't be different. Otherwise, you're not testing, you're not training on the same environment. And all this is automatic, right? I actually don't need to use a single human. Amazing. All right, so what are we going to do now is that we're going to change reality. This is what I said. On the left-hand side is reality. On the right-hand side is, again, simulation. And what I'm showing you here is that we are going to modify the behavior of the actors such that we are going to create maybe a more hazard-like situation. Okay, so here I'm going to, in the simulation, which is the right, the white car, instead of taking a left turn, is going to abort the left turn, and it's going to come into our lane and slow down so that we need to slam on the brakes, otherwise we're going to hit it, right? So why is this important is that, well, now we can generate all sorts of variations of reality. Imagine you get into a situation that was, oops, moment, it almost happened. I'm sure you always want to know, like, what would have happened if it was a little bit more? Would I have crashed versus not? Did my sister react versus not? So now you can do it because you control this, and it's on the cloud, so nobody's going to get harmed, right? So you can really understand the robustness of your system. You can reproduce every single issue that you had before. All right, so the other thing that we can do is this world is composable, this virtual world. On the right-hand side, I'm adding one more actor that came from somewhere else in the world. This person, this vehicle, has never been in San Francisco before. But I can generate scenes with this particular vehicle in San Francisco because now I can compose things that I have observed somewhere else. Okay, so we can have all sorts of pickups from Texas, for example, driving in Toronto. All right, we can simulate and change who is doing what. This is what you see over here, right? Where the white car and the gray car are changed. And then lastly, what we can do is we can simulate the world from different perspectives. It doesn't need to be the same perspective. It's a 3D world, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm moving the camera to go on the right lane and then simulate it how I would have observed this from the right lane. Why do I need this? Because the vehicle at test is going to behave differently than the capture footage. So I need to generate this from any perspective. Okay, so let me show you some of this in all these scenes that we saw before. Left, right, up, down, right? This is the technology that we use in order to use any data to train our trucks because we can modify it and resimulate it from any viewpoint. So that is our specific trucks, even though the data was not the truck in the first place. Right? So that's capabilities nobody else has. That is really that next generation of technology. Cool, so this allows us to be more cost-effective, safer, highly scalable, and highly flexible. All right, so that's Waabi. Now let's get into the lessons learned into building Waabi. So hopefully I convinced you that what we are doing is really cool, and and it's very, very exciting domain and whatnot. All right, so we mentioned before that this was one of the largest Series A in Canadian history, and it wasn't just about the money itself, but it was also about who were the investors. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit of the story behind the fundraise. So I fundraised on the first day of the company. We didn't have a single line of code. I had myself and a team. That was it. Okay, and I went in front of the investors and I say, I want $100 million. Right? So pretty bold, right? That's what people told me before. I didn't realize at the time. So one of the questions is, why did we need $100 million? Right? So I mentioned before that this is actually a pretty expensive kind of field because, yes, a regular truck, one truck, is $250,000 US. Pretty expensive. You need a few trucks if you're going to do self-driving. You need a team. You need many, many things. So actually the sensors, etc. So you still need quite a bit of money. But there were two options for me. One is to raise a seed and then raise Series A, or go directly for a very a relatively large amount or large amount. And the reason why I decided to go for the large amount is because we wanted to build this new transformational technology. I didn't want to be worried about fundraising after 6 months, after 9 months. I wanted to have the money so that we could execute and then build this transformational technology. And that's why I did a very, very detailed plan of the entire roadmap technically, all the people that we need, all the assets that we need, and how much money I needed so I have runway afterwards. And it turns out it was the nice $100 million. Okay, so that's how the number came across, okay? Thank you. All right, so the other thing that was important is who are the investors? There were many people excited. Many people really understood the reason why Waabi was to be, a player, if not the player. And the way I chose it is I categorized this in 3 buckets that I wanted. The first bucket was I wanted the lead investor to be a deep technology investor because I wanted them to understand what this transformational technology is. So Khosla Ventures was a perfect match in that sense. They are one of the biggest investors in OpenAI, right? So definitely they like this kind of stuff. The second bucket was about logistics. We do trucks, so that was important. So ABC as well as Uber are clear investors in terms of their position in the space. And the last bit is that it was important for me to have representation from the Canadian ecosystem that is thriving, that is really growing now. And that's where Radical, BDC, and Omers came into play. Okay, so very, very strategic into who to bring to the cap table. Okay, and that's very important who you bring, because if you bring somebody that you don't get along, that their views are very different, you are going to have a problem, for real. So careful. All right, so other things that are important is, let's talk about the fundraise pitch. So it was, the end result was very successful, but the question is what went into it, right? The first thing that you need to do is have a very good product market fit. What does that mean? Something that people are going to use, and something where you can also show that you are differentiated. If you are one-off, that's going to be very hard to fund, because the off have already maybe several years ahead of you, right? So you need to have a very clear reason into whether it's the business model, whether it's the sector that you're actually entering, or whether it's your technology or the team, or hopefully several of these things that differentiate you from the others, and that's the reason why they should invest in you. The team, extremely important. So I was chief scientist at Uber, head of R&D before building Waabi. I decided to go and exit, and I went with my team, a very large part of my team, that formed the beginning of Waabi. Okay, and that team is amazing, and that was one of the reasons as well, because it was not just the founder alone, we were actually 37 people maybe, something like that. So it's a very, very different type of company that you typically see with just 2-3 founders to start with. And the last bit, which was important, was external validation. What investors are going to ask is, why you? Or why this particular company, right? They're going to ask around in terms of, people to validate your approach, yourself, etc. And this is actually where my career at U of T was extremely important, because I really made a big name with doing research and innovation at U of T, right? As part of being a professor, as part of being a group, as part of doing research. And that definitely was very good, and my experience at Uber also validated me on the business side. So these two things were fundamental for me to be able to have the race that you saw before. So they were natural steps in terms of first innovation, right, with research, what I did for 20-something years, whatever. Then industry, to understand what it means to build a business. And then entrepreneurship, which is the final step, hopefully, of my career. All right. All right, so last slide, a little bit of advice for you, right? So be bold, aim high. I tell you, first day of the company, 100 million, right? That's as bold as it gets. And this is not the time to be humble. You don't know me, but I am a very humble person. That I like to do things or show things by doing, not by talking. And this was a moment where I had to stop doing that. Because in front of the VCs, you cannot be humble, they will never fund you. You need to say, why is you? Why is this team? Why is this technology? In a way that is very, very convincing. Okay, very American style like, okay? All right, hopefully that's, oh, you're recording. Okay, hi. All right, so other things that as an entrepreneur is very important, step out of your comfort zone. When I decided to build Waabi, I had no idea what it meant to build a company. So I learned on the job, okay? And definitely it stretched me in all, many different directions. And it's hard, okay? For me, it was hard because I was very successful, and then suddenly something new, and oh my, I don't know how to do this. I don't have an example, right? So it was, it wasn't easy, but definitely it's something that I took the challenge, and that was important. Wear many hats. Meaning, so I'm CEO of the company, but I also do a lot of the technology, business, HR, legal, PR, whatever. Make coffee, you name it. Anything, right? So that's very, very important that you embrace that. That was hard for me at the beginning because I'm a technologist. I love research. I love doing technical stuff. Once I told myself that more than 50% of your time is going to be something else and you just need to embrace it, and I embrace it, I was happy again. So that was important for me, that realization into, it's okay. These are new things. They're actually challenging and exciting as well. Yes, embrace them. Surround yourself with advisors. this was the first time in my career that I have great advisors, and it turned out to be very, very important because I have never done this before. And they were fundamental in terms of being a sounding board. How do I do this? How do I behave in this situation? What do I do here? And the most important thing, I will say, and it's particularly for all members here of minorities, is that it's going to be tough along the way. And many people are going to tell you that you can't do it for whatever reason. Just don't listen to them, okay? Never give up. You're going to do it, okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel, for that really inspiring talk. My name is Morgan Behrens. I'm a professor of neuroscience here at U of T. I'm also a CEO and a co-founder of a company called Hippocamera. And the things that you were saying about, balancing research and starting a company and stepping out of your comfort zone really, really resonated. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to be taking questions. Okay. So the first question comes from a startup founder with an early stage venture who's trying to attract technical talent. What advice do you have for this person to help them build the best possible team?
And if you want to identify yourself, that would be cool so that I can talk to the person also, if you feel comfortable, obviously. Okay. I think, first of all, you need to identify, it's very important to identify what you need when, and how to build a robust company, and the layers of the company and the things that you need. And then in terms of talent, I think, tapping on your network, tapping on, the people that you know is also very, very important at the beginning. Once the company starts having a name, things are easier, right? But at the beginning, go a lot into the, your network and what is close to you and who can help you to actually find that talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes our networks are a lot deeper than we realize. And if you just put yourself out there, right, people come up. Okay, this next question is from someone named Ryan Y, who's asking, who are your role models and inspirations?
Oh, fantastic question. So sorry to disappoint. I don't have like this one person that, I would say that's the role model. I think for me, if I look at who I admire is single moms that work and that they, go through all the stuff, alone in order to have a job, raise their children, survive, and do so many things. So I admire people like this, but I don't have like one person like, oh my God, yeah.
So this is a question that I didn't ask, but I could have asked you, which was, did you take time away from your work as a professor when starting to build?
Sorry, say that again?
Did you take time away from your work as a professor when you were starting to build your company?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we were just chatting about this before. Let's say this is going to be controversial because I'm at U of T, but if you really want to do a startup and you really care about your startup, you can't split your life into two. You cannot have your, say, professorship life and research and whatever, and then what the startup does. I don't believe that that's compatible. I don't believe that that's something that you can really push to the next level. So what I did was to bring these two worlds into one. What does that mean is that all my graduate students are actually with me at the company. And that's where they do the research. And the company is built where at the core is innovation. They innovate within the production system, but they innovate, they publish papers, they really push their thesis, etc. So they're very successful. They don't compromise anything. On the contrary, they have broader horizons, and they can really have the resources, but more importantly, understand what are the real questions that research should answer versus engineering can solve already. But that's basically what it is. Just marry these two things, and it works like a charm. So.
Yeah, you've definitely figured out a way to have it all. Hats off to you for that. Okay, so this question, as a woman in business, have you ever experienced gender discrimination? And the next question assumes that you have. And how did you deal with it?
Amazing question. Let's see. I wrote a little piece yesterday on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about my story, I recommend you read that. But there is where I acknowledge publicly for the first time, I guess, that my path was not easy. And I'm not talking about business. I'm talking about the last 25 years, I guess, since I'm in a technical field. Whether it is by being a bit more of an outsider, being different. There were many instances, many unfortunately instances of discrimination, harassment through my career. And many people that told me that I cannot do something because of whatever it is. The way I sound, the way I look, being a woman, you name it, doesn't matter. Right, so, it gave me even, I have, infinite grit, but it gave me even more grit in terms of, you think I can't do it? I'm really gonna do it, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And that's my superpower, is that no matter who puts me on the floor, I stand up and I continue forward. And I think that's, it's unfortunate that I went through this. It's unfortunate that many of you will still go through some of these things. We just need to minimize that, make sure that there is a world not so far from today where we don't need to have this conversation. Yeah.
Here's to that. Sorry. So what advice would you look for when choosing co-founders or your founding team? Skills, attitudes, behavior, and so on.
Oh yeah, fantastic question as well. You guys have great questions. So I'm the only founder, which means that when there is something that is not going well, and in a company, there is always something, no matter how successful you are, and it's all the time, right? It's a startup, it's up and down, I don't have that other person to talk to. So from that perspective, I wish I was more than me. But I have a fantastic team that, certain things I can talk and whatnot. What I will say, although I didn't choose co-founders, what I will say that is very important is that you need to choose people that you can really work very closely with, that you can really go through difficult times, that you really trust. And that's extremely important, more important than how famous they are or if they actually, if you have a hole in the company and that's what they're gonna kind of like cover. I think it's more important that people that you can really rely on and you get it, you have each other's back. And I will say that this philosophy actually is for the entire company. That's one of the other things that I'm also very excited about, how to innovate in the culture so that you build something very different, very unique, like a family.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. Can you tell us a bit about your IP strategy and whether or not you have any words of advice for founders on that front?
Interesting. Let's see how much I can say. IP strategy. So I'm still trying to fully figure out the IP strategy. I think it's important to build an IP portfolio, meaning to file some patents of the stuff that is unique about your technology. I think that it's not necessarily to protect the invention that much. For example, in the field of AI, it goes so fast that it's kind of outdated after 2 archives, whatever. But I think what is important to build that IP portfolio is when you talk to investors. If you are ever going to sell the company, I will not, but maybe that's an exit is what you want, or to protect from lawsuits. What do I mean is that oftentimes, companies come, I sue you for something, but here is my big chunk, and I'm sure you violate somewhere here. And then you go back and you say, here is my other chunk. Okay, more or less the same chunk. Okay, let's settle. Right? So it's a protection more like things like this than the actual invention itself.
Okay, so this is a question that was on my mind too. Can you share with us any thoughts on dealing with big competition? So how do you think of companies like Tesla competing in your space?
Yeah, so Tesla is doing something very different from us, right? Where they are level 3 company, right? And passenger vehicles, they haven't yet announced semi-trucks with autonomy, whatever. So it's a very different company business model, etc. For us, what is very important is, at least my philosophy is, and this is philosophy in life as well, is ignore kind of like everything that's going on out there and focus. Make sure that you have the right strategy and then focus on that. There's a lot of noise, and that's only going to be distracting. And then make sure that you you look back and see, that indeed that you weren't wrong, in a regular cadence, right? And I think that's very, very important. And, in the case of self-driving, it's an interesting time, and I put interesting with quotation marks, because a lot of the players are in trouble right now, and it's sad to see because I have many friends on those companies, right? Some of the companies are, closing the doors. We had a couple, in recent weeks. So that's tough to see, right? But that's also the reason why we're doing this in the first place, right? To push that. I would say, just focus on what you're doing. Just to give maybe one more bit of depth there. When I started the company 2 years ago, what I heard a lot was, too late. Everybody's in this path for several years. What are you doing? What I heard today, 2 years in, is, how did you perfectly time this, right? And nothing changed, right? I just focused on doing the thing. And it turns out that, indeed, that asymptote that I was talking about is really, now it's evident to everybody. Before it was maybe evident to a small number of us. And now it's so obvious that it makes so much sense to actually build this new company to bring that technology and then do this much more cost efficiently and faster, right? But if I listen to the competition and everything, and oh my God, going against Google, right? It's like, that's daunting, but we are in a very good spot today.
I'm going to write that on my forehead. So I think this is our last question, and I think it's a nice one to end on. So how do you define the culture at Waabi? How do you try to shape it or to nurture it?
Yeah, and I will point back to that write-up. But let's say, culture. It's important to hear everybody. It's important to build a safe space where everybody can contribute and talk, regardless of how junior you are, regardless of whether this is not exactly your topic, etc. It's important to build innovation at the core and be something that is celebrated, not just a side project of, maybe some researchers doing something. And something that I care about a lot is the pursuit of excellence. I'm actually obsessed with this, which is how do we learn, how do we get better, how do we do things better every single day. And being what I call one Waabi, everybody together. And no politics, no nothing, just we are here together to really transform the world and just focus on it and being very humble.